Hi, you're listening to Book Chat with author Vivian E. Moore.
Welcome, everybody, to this week's episode. We really appreciate you joining us. This podcast really shows us how we can all learn, live, and thrive off of each other. By sharing our knowledge through our conversations, we will impart some knowledge whilst learning ourselves how to progress even further. Here is your host.
Hello and welcome to Book Chat. I am your host, author Vivian E. Moore. I hope everyone is having a great weekend. I hope you had a great week. I had to take a minute out my mouth there. I'm sorry for that. Anyway, today I have a special guest on the show that we will be chatting with. And the title of today's show is called The Craft. And we will be interviewing or chatting with Diane O'Connell. She is a former Random House editor, and she is also the author of 6 books, including the award-winning The Novel Maker's Handbook, The No-Nonsense Guide to Crafting a Marketable Story. And also, she is the founder of Write to Sell Your Book, and she has helped dozens of authors achieve an international publishing success. Diane's passion for helping authors helps to improve their craft, and it has also made her one of the top editors in her field. So welcome to the show, Diane.
Oh, thank you for having me, Vivian. It's very nice to be here.
Well, thank you. I appreciate you agreeing to come on the show and talk about what it is you do. So if you would like to explain to us just a little bit more, give us a little bit more detail about exactly what a crafting coach is, I would greatly appreciate that.
Well, sure. Actually, it varies depending on the stage that the author is in when they approach me.
Yes.
So I can work with authors at every stage. For instance, some authors come to me when they're at the beginning of stages of their story. They have a sense of what they want it to be, a sense of their characters.
Yes.
But they really don't have a technique for bringing it all together.
Yes.
And they come in and they know that they need some guidance at the start so that they can pull together a draft that really works.
Okay.
And so I will work with them on developing their characters, developing the themes of the story, deepening the plot, structuring it, all those various things that you need to have a terrific novel come together. Then there are the authors who have written a draft and they know it's not quite there yet. They know it needs something, but they really don't know what they need. And they know that, especially in today's publishing world, they need to bring a professional into the picture.
Okay.
And so I will work with them on, again, all those aspects, going through the manuscript, looking for what's working, what's not working. And actually, I work a little differently than a lot of other editors work. And I found that this has been very effective in that I will, after reading the manuscript multiple times and forming a plan for it, I will sit down for a couple of days, one-on-one with the author. And we will go through everything so that the author has a very clear idea about what they need to do. I'm right there if they have questions. There's a lot of back and forth in the creative process as we go through it, so that when they leave, they actually have a clear revision plan and they know what they need to do.
Okay, because I think that's very important. As a writer, you want to make sure that you put forth your best effort, and most certainly get someone to help you to do that. To take you through every single step until the process is complete. So, how long generally does it take from start to finish when you're helping an author?
Oh, geez, that depends.
Okay.
Yeah, well, so much depends on what they have going on in their own life, how much time they can devote to it. and how much work they need along the way. So I've had some authors where, let's say, if they came to me with a rough manuscript, a rough draft, by the time they were done and published, it might have been in under a year, 6 months maybe. I've had other authors that I've been working on and off with for a couple of years because they're trying to fit this writing into their work life and home life and everything else they have going on. Also, some authors need, frankly, more revisions than others.
Okay. Because that was going to be my next question. And two, how do you determine who's teachable and not so teachable? Because I know I'm asking this question because I know you have a lot of authors or writers who they may not even be authors yet, published authors yet, but sometimes they go in thinking that they know more than the editors. So how do you determine who you will work with and who you just determine that, okay, I can't work with this individual because they're not listening to me?
Well, a phone call always helps.
Okay.
I always start the process with a phone call and the author. And I actually have them fill out a little intake form so I get a sense of their writing, sense of what their goals are, what they've done in the past in terms of workshops or working with other editors. But in the phone call, I can hear a lot from an author. I can hear whether they're very open to listening and to change, or whether they have a particular idea that they have in their mind, and they just want an editor to make it look pretty.
Oh, okay.
Right? To carry out their vision. So those are the authors that I do not feel my input is going to help them much.
Okay.
I try to steer clear of authors who have a preconceived idea. But, let me reframe that.
Okay.
As an editor, what I see my job as being is helping the author write their story in the most effective way possible. So I don't try to impose my ideas, but I look for what it is they want to tell, and often they're working against their own interests or their story is not coming out the way they intend. And so that's where an editor working in that kind of creative back and forth process can help them get to the story they want.
Okay.
Some authors really, they may have been working on something for years and they're tired and they don't want to work on it anymore, and they just want somebody to kind of tweak the language and fix a little something here and there. So again, those are the authors that I don't feel that I'm most effective working with.
Okay, and I mean that's good. That's a good point to make. I was going to ask. I know that, like you said, you deal with a lot of authors, and you have that initial phone call to find out exactly, what direction they want to go. But do you find some authors are more stronger willed than others once, after you've done that initial process, but once you start working with them and, because I know how some writers, they want things to stay the way they want to. They want to keep parts in that they, that's special to them, that they think help tell the story. But, and as you said too, you don't impose your thoughts upon them, but would you make suggestions to them?
Oh, Vivian, you really hit the nail on the head with that one.
Okay.
Well, because, there are, and this cuts across the board for most authors, there will be those characters or those scenes or what have you that they really want to hold on to, even if it's not serving the story. And part of the reason, and by the way, this particularly happens for authors who are writing historical novels or something that has taken a lot of research.
Okay.
They're the ones I have the hardest time letting go of all that research.
Yeah, understandable.
Exactly. So partly the author knows how much work they put into a certain character or passage or whatever. They may have worked it and reworked it 100 times and they feel very wedded to that. But as the editor, I don't know that, right? As I'm reading, I just know what's working and what's not
Right.
working. So I can have a much more objective viewpoint on that. And so that's where I find many authors have a hard time letting go of those things because they're not objective. They have a vested interest
Yes.
in that passage or that character or, even the way they're writing a particular sentence, but I like it. I think it's great.
Like I know, like a petulant child, I don't want to get rid of it. No, I'm keeping it.
So I tell them, I said, okay, you can always put it in a blog.
Yeah.
You don't have to get rid of it forever.
Right. Well, okay, so at this point, if you feel as though the book is too long, would you suggest to them maybe putting it in a series or something like that? That way maybe they can keep some of it, if not all of it, just put it in a separate book?
Well, that's not always as easy as it may sound.
Okay.
With a series, and this, particularly fantasy writers, are series writers. And now, by the way, I just want to distinguish between a series and a multi-part book.
Okay.
So, you have series, especially like with the mysteries by Michael Connelly and Harlan Coben, where you have the same central character who appears in story after story, or maybe even a group of characters, but they're each separate individual stories.
Okay.
With a multi-book series, like Lord of the Rings, let's say, the author would initially start out seeing this as a whole continuing series, but in order for it to work, each book has to give the reader a sense of satisfaction. It has to have some kind of an ending and some kind of closure.
Right.
And then something that leads into the next book to keep readers' interest. So when you've got a manuscript that is very long, and for instance, there's one author I had at the retreat I conducted this last week in Massachusetts, where she's working with it. It's a brilliant book, but it's 175,000 words at this point.
Okay.
And she's got more books in the series down the road. So what we're looking to do is to say, how can you bring this down to manageable length? So often I advise authors, try to get that initial manuscript down to marketable size, which is usually under 100,000 words. Ways that they can do that, often, I have a whole process for that, but a way of seeing if there are scenes that seem to cover the same territory or seem to duplicate each other, if they have characters where they can combine 2 or 3 characters into one character, if they have, often it's excess verbiage that they can cut. So there are a lot of techniques that you can use to actually take something that's overly long and make it very tight and of marketable length.
Okay. Because I've read, and I love book series, and I've read some that are extensive, like down at Gabaldon, the Outlander series. And those books are like thick like an encyclopedia. They really are. But because the books are so well written and they cover so much information, I don't mind the book being that long, but I wonder why some books that are, really long like that are still marketable, whereas other ones aren't. Now, I know that Outlander was Diana Gabaldon's first book that, became a bestseller, major bestseller. And so she was a fresh new author on the scene when she put this book out there. So that worked for her. And, and some writers may use that as an argument to say, well, I've read plenty of other authors who have books that are like over 170,000 words and no one is telling them they need to do this and they need to do that. So how do you deal with a author that has that outlook or uses that argument?
And it's a legitimate argument. But for the vast majority of first-time authors, in other words, authors who are looking for a publishing deal for the first time, it really comes down to two things. One, if the idea is so original, you know, the publisher is willing to put it out there in a longer length, and the writing has to be absolutely top-notch. And the other thing is it's an economic decision for the publisher. So the longer a book is, the more it will cost to actually produce and print. Therefore, they have to raise the cover price, the list price of the book, to a point that may be very hard to sell to people who are not familiar with the author.
Right.
You know, so I work with best-selling, you know, authors who have their first novels as bestsellers. And the interesting thing for people outside the industry to note is that the publisher will decide by the size of the advance right away if they want this author to be a bestseller. So when they've invested a decent amount of money, then they've got the whole marketing department, the publicity department, the advertising department behind them. They will really push, and they have their own techniques for getting things on the New York Times best-selling list, for getting the books at the front of the stores in those nice display tables. You know, so that's all from the publisher's end.
Okay.
But it's so hard these days to get a book published. And Outlander was published a number of years ago.
Yeah,
you know,
back in the 80s.
Right.
Right.
Back in the 80s was a whole different ballgame than it is now in publishing.
Yes.
So there are fewer publishers, and publishers are looking things more in terms of bottom line and what they almost want to have a guarantee for themselves that they're going to make back their investment on the book. So part of it is trying to keep something within a marketable length.
Okay. So just touching on publishing just a little bit more, how many self-published authors do you work with, and how many authors that you help who are trying to get their books noticed by publishing companies? What is the average between those two?
You know, it's actually 50-50.
Okay.
And it's interesting. In the years that I've been doing this, self-publishing was always the poor stepchild.
Yes.
Well, if I can't get a deal, I guess I'll have to self-publish.
Yes.
And things have changed a lot
They
over
have.
the years.
They have.
And they have. And actually, you know, if you do it right with self-publishing, and I actually have a whole self-publishing imprint that I have specifically for the authors who I work with who want to go that way. You know, you have to make an investment there, and you have to make sure you've got the right cover, and it's edited and copy edited, it looks good. You know, you have to basically do everything that the publisher would do to have a quality product out there.
Yes.
And you have to do the marketing. But the interesting thing is, and part of the reason that I'm having more authors come to me with the initial idea of self-publishing is they know that they're expected to do all this marketing, much more marketing than in the past with a traditional publisher. So, for instance, I had lunch with an agent not too long ago, and I was talking about a particular author, and the first thing that she asked me was, what's the website? Does the author have a website? And actually, the author did not. And she said that's the first thing that an agent is going to look for, a publisher is going to look for. They're going to Google your name, and they want to know what you're already doing. Now, it sounds kind of oxymoronic, right? How can you market your book before it's published?
Right.
But they want to know that you're going to be a good partner in the marketing with them. So that's become much more. And so I've had, you know, a number of authors that say, well, wait a minute, if I'm doing all that work anyway, if I'm expected to do that, why should I give away all the sales to the author and take this pittance of a royalty?
Right. Which makes sense, if you got to do all that anyway. But I guess, just speaking on behalf of the publisher's point of view, they want to make sure that you have a good social media presence out there. So if they see that that you're already out there, that they can Google you, and find you out there, then it makes sense to, maybe take a risk on that person, because they already have a presence out there that people are familiar with who they are. So maybe it won't be that hard to sell them on whatever book it is that they're trying to publish. Now I want to ask you. And you don't have to give me like a price or anything, but I just want to know, how expensive is it to use your product in order to make your book marketable? What would you say is the average?
You mean for clients who work with me,
right,
to get to a market before the publishing process?
Well, before the publishing process, just the process that you do with working with them. Do you do it by the hour? Is it a set amount?
Well, you see, I have a number of different ways of working with authors, because some have, people have all different kinds of budgets. Mm-hmm. So for those who have, where money is not a particular issue, mm-hmm. It can cost about $15,000 or so to mm-hmm. work with me. Mm-hmm. For those where money is an issue, and I certainly understand that because I've been there myself, mm-hmm. I also have a team of editors who work with me, and I stay involved in the whole process. I mm-hmm. train them in my techniques, mm-hmm. And so that, depending on how long the manuscript is, I would say on the low end it would be $2,000, on mm-hmm. the high end maybe up to, if it's a lot of words, up to $5,000. So it's really that is based on the word count, working with the team editors. Mm-hmm. Working with me is based just on the whole package, mm-hmm. because I don't keep track of time so much. So I'm there for the author. I'm like 100% available, and with that. The other thing I will say is, for authors who are at the beginning and who want to work with me but who can't afford that much, mm-hmm. I am now doing a lot of coaching. Okay. So the internet has made that really very easy. Yes. With Skype, with mm-hmm. Zoom. Mm-hmm. So I have a lot of international clients. I'm working with a gentleman right now in England. Mm-hmm. So, we do face-to-face, and, we have meetings generally about once every month or so. Okay. And so for that's priced out according to how many sessions we do and how much you want, and that's a lot less expensive. Okay, which makes sense, but any author that is coming to you, they I'm pretty sure they realize that this is an investment in their career, especially if they're serious about taking it all the way to the top, because with the the book market being what it is, especially self-publishing is saturated right now. So. Oh, go ahead. And Vivian, I'm really glad you mentioned that, mm-hmm. and you mentioned the word career, mm-hmm. because that's the thing that I like to impress on the authors that I work with, is that you need to think of this as not just, I've written this book, I want to get published, mm-hmm. but that this is a business. Yes. Whether you're producing a book, you're self-publishing a book, or you're trying to get a traditional deal, you have to approach it as a business. Yes. And the way that any business person would say, I need to invest in this, and I need to invest in that, and I need to do these activities to grow my business. Mm-hmm. It's the same thing with writing. Yes. And I think for a lot of authors, especially ones that are just now, getting their feet wet, they don't realize that it is a business. They just think that I wrote a book, and as you said, I just want to get it published. But it's more to that. If you want to write more than one book and you want it to be successful, to launch it into a career, and it takes a lot of work.
And I'm pretty sure that you you advise each client that that it's not easy, because it's not, because the competition is very stiff out there. When you think about the number of books that comes out pretty much every day,
Yes.
it's stiff out there. And getting your book noticed, or getting it up to par so it can be noticed, it takes a lot of work. So I guess it depends on how much you want to invest in your future, in your career, as to, to how much you spend. So, go ahead.
By the way, to that point, I also want to say it's perfectly okay if you just want to write a book and have it out there and give it to friends and family. There's nothing wrong with that.
No, not at all.
Yeah.
Not at all. Because you have a lot of people that are like that. It's like, well, I have this idea, and I want to share it. I don't want to share it on a global basis. I just want to share it with my family. It could be a memoir, whatever, or poetry, or whatever it is. I think everyone has most certainly has a right to if you wrote the book, then of course you want other people to read it. You just don't want to keep it to yourself. But
right.
So now that we've covered all of those bases, I want to want you to share, how can people get in touch with you to use your services?
Well, I would advise first going to my website, which is write2sellyourbook.com, and that's WRITE,
okay.
to sellyourbook.com. There's a contact place there. If they want to reach out to me directly, they can just email me at Diane@write2sellyourbook.com.
Okay.
And by the way, I have a lot of videos on my site as well.
Great.
So, if you want to go and get some free information, you can go and watch the videos.
Okay, that sounds like a great plan for before you actually get the service. Just see what it's all about. So that makes perfect sense to me. Well, Diane, thank you so very much for coming on. You have shared a wealth of knowledge, and I've just enjoyed this conversation so much.
I too. Anytime you want me on.
All right. Well, hey, I would definitely have you back on, because I love this, and I thank you so very much for taking the time out of your day to come on and talk to my guests. So I hope you continue with the rest of your day. I hope it's great, and hopefully in the future, maybe next year, we'll get to talk again. We'll get to talk more.
Terrific. Nice talking to you, Vivian.
You too, Diane. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. All right, folks, so we just finished talking with Diane O'Connell, and I hope that you got so much out of today's show. I know I did, and very useful information. And, everybody needs someone to coach them on what they need to do and how to do it, because sometimes, your biggest part of this journey is to actually write the book, to get that book written. And then sometimes you have to turn it over. It's like a race, if you're running, not necessarily a marathon, but if you one of those people who like races that are like heats, you have to pass that baton off to someone else, to the next person that's running that heat with you. And sometimes it's just how you have to look at it. You do your part, and then you let someone else do their part, because, you may know how to write the story, but then you let someone who knows how to edit and market it for you do the rest. And I understand that if you are a self-published author, then, you are responsible for doing everything. We've had this conversation before. You're responsible for doing everything, but still it's a good idea to use someone like Diane, use her services to help you out more, especially if you want to self-publish, because you want that book to be top-notch, because it is in competition with a lot of those books that are traditionally published, and you want yours to stand out as well. But before I let you go, guys, I want to make sure that I give you some URLs so you can keep in contact with me on this platform. Of course, the first one is Spreaker, and it's https://www.spreaker.com/user/author Vivian E. Moore. You can also Facebook me. You can Twitter me and Instagram me if you so desire. You can just type my name in and you will be able to find me. Also, if you like reading my blogs, you can go out there to https://authorvivianemore.blogspot.com. And also, if you missed today's live show. We got off to a late start, and I do apologize for that, but I was having technical difficulties. Hey, things happen that are out of my control. But anyway, you can listen to the show on Spreaker, of course. You can also listen to it on iTunes. You can listen to it on YouTube, Spotify, SoundCloud, and there is another one that I cannot think of right now, but that's okay. I think that's enough. And I hope that you did enjoy the show today and, jotted down a lot of the information that was given.